Welcome to today's Explainer. We're going to dive right in and unpack how a critical analysis of a deeply ancient Sanskrit poem actually holds a pretty startling and maybe even a little uncomfortable mirror up to our modern everyday psychological isolation. We'll be looking at Rabindranath Tagore's absolutely brilliant essay on the classical text Meghdoot and seeing how his insights totally reframe the way we look at our own modern lives.
So let's just start with this wild question. What if a myth from the 4th century, literally a story about a magical cloud, holds the secret to why so many modern relationships just feel disconnected? Well, today we are going to explore exactly how Rabindranath Tagore connects a mythical demigod from ancient India straight to our everyday reality, right down to the living rooms we sit in. It's an incredible journey blending literature, history, and deep human psychology.
All right, Section 1, Kalidasa's Meghdoot, Yaksha's Exile. To really grasp Tagore's modern diagnosis, we first have to understand the ancient story he was looking at.
And the crucial word to lock in right away is exile, or in Bengali, nirvasan. This sets the anchor for the whole shebang today. See, it's not just about being physically kicked out of a place. Fundamentally, it's a profound state of emotional, cultural, and psychological alienation. Definitely keep this specific, heavy definition of exile in the back of your mind, because it's the core thread we'll be pulling on throughout the whole explainer.
We're actually going on a huge macro to micro journey today. We're telescoping all the way from a 4th century myth right through Tagore's massive revelations in 1891, sweeping through 20th century Western theater, and finally landing smack dab in a modern-day apartment. It just goes to show, ideas this powerful definitely don't stay confined to one era.
Just picture the majestic details Tagore highlights from ancient India. He paints this incredibly rich, poetic picture of pure, innocent beauty and just immense cultural wealth. He's talking about vibrant, glorious cities like Ujjain, Vidisha, and Avanti. He mentions these grand, immovable mountains, Kailash and Vindhya, and the pure flowing waters of rivers like Reba, Shipra, and Baitrabadi. It's a world completely characterized by majesty, purity, and innocent lovers waiting for one another. It honestly feels like a unified paradise.
But within that majestic paradise, the core myth of Kalidasa's Meghdoot is actually super tragic. A yaksha, basically a type of demigod, fails in his duties and gets banished by his master to the distant Ramgiri mountain, terribly far away from his beloved in Alakapuri. He's physically stranded. But then, as the monsoon season rolls in, he spots a dark cloud passing by. Since he can't physically cross that distance himself, he actually begs this cloud to act as his messenger and carry his words of love to his partner. It is the ultimate story of physical exile.
Moving to Section 2, our alienation from ancient India. How exactly does Tagore shift this from a cool ancient myth to a very real societal diagnosis? Well, he looks at the yaksha's physical exile and realizes, wait a second, this is happening to us right now, just on a cultural level.
So, setting the scene, the year is 1891. Long before his later, much more overtly political writings, Tagore realizes something totally heartbreaking about his own era. He looks around and sees a massive, deep fracture in the world he's living in. And the contrast is literally night and day. On one side, you've got the ancient India of Kalidasa, pure, mythic, unified, brimming with majesty. And on the flip side, you have the reality of Tagore's modern India in the late 19th century. It was incredibly complex, heavily burdened by British imperial rule, fracturing under intense political and religious divisions, and just suffocating under the weight of imperialist struggles. Looking at that huge contrast, Tagore comes to a stunning conclusion. We are the yaksha. Modern people are completely exiled from our own cultural paradise, cut off from that unified, majestic past. We can't physically go back. We're stranded on our own modern Ramgiri mountain. And the only way we can even touch that golden era is by sending a cloud, by relying on the wings of poetry, literature, and imagination to briefly bridge the gap to a past we've literally been banished from.
Which brings us to Section 3, Mental Isolation of Modern Man. Because Tagore definitely didn't stop at cultural exile, he zoomed in even further, taking it right through the front doors of our own homes.
He takes the concept of the yaksha's physical banishment and applies it directly to us today. He argues that modern people suffer from a micro-exile. We might share a house, share a society, heck, we might even share a bed with someone. But we exist in entirely different mental worlds. We are living under the exact same roof, but emotionally, we are oceans apart.
Just think about that for a second.
Imagine every single human being as an isolated island. We're surrounded by this endless, uncrossable expanse of water. We try to send out messages to each other, little passing clouds of conversation. But the emotional distance is just vast. We can talk, sure, but we can't truly touch the minds or hearts of the people who are physically closest to us. It means the modern condition is fundamentally one of profound internal isolation.
To really drive this point home, Tagore connects this isolation to an absolutely heartbreaking line from Eastern Vaishnava Padavali poetry, which is a tradition of medieval devotional songs. Translated, it means crying over separation, even while embracing. Wow. It perfectly captures the pure agony of holding someone in your arms, being physically as close as two humans can possibly be, yet feeling entirely disconnected from them in your mind and soul. It's the ultimate paradox of modern intimacy.
All right, Section 4, Western Absurd Plays and Meghdoot. Now, you might be wondering, is this just some Eastern philosophical musing? History actually proves otherwise. Half a century after Tagore wrote his essay, Western playwrights in the 20th century became utterly obsessed with the exact same psychological crisis. The crisis of modern emotional isolation wasn't just an Eastern concept. It literally birthed an entire movement known as absurdist theater in the West. They were diagnosing the exact same societal sickness that Tagore found hidden away in a 4th century myth.
Let's walk through a perfect example of this, Eugene Ionesco's famous absurdist play, Amadei. The setup is simple. A married couple shares an apartment going through the daily motions. Slowly, through all these completely nonsensical conversations, they realize they're essentially total strangers. But here is the wild, absurd part. A literal corpse appears in their home, and day by day it grows. It gets bigger and bigger until its arms and legs are literally breaking through the windows. This growing corpse, shockingly and perfectly, symbolizes their dead, expanding emotional distance. It just takes up all the space in their home. It's literally Tagore's island metaphor, brought to life on a Western stage.
And that brings us to Section 5, Miles Apart Even When Close. Let's synthesize all of this to truly understand the tragedy of our modern condition.
If we break down the whole evolution of this exile motif we've been exploring, it happens in 3 brilliant stages. On the first level, you have the physical exile, the mythical Yaksha, literally stranded on a mountain, miles away from his love. Then, Tagore elevates it to the cultural exile, a nation totally cut off from the majesty and purity of its ancient past. And finally, the most devastating level, the psychological exile. That's the modern couple. That's you and me, emotionally isolated, alienated in our very own bedrooms, unable to truly connect with the person sitting right next to us.
It's honestly an incredibly powerful realization. So as we wrap up today's explainer, I want to leave you with a final, provocative thought to really ponder about your own life and relationships. Are you too living on an island? Are you sending imaginary clouds, these desperate little messages, trying to reach the heart of a loved one who is sitting right next to you? Thank you so much for joining me to unpack this fascinating topic today. Stay curious and keep exploring the deeper layers of the world around you.